Coach Tony, Risling Podium Performance. Today is arm day, which also means we start off with the front squats. This way we get the juices flowing, we get a little bit more of that fight or flight response going, a little more adrenaline for the actual arm part of the workout. I'll give a little more play-by-play as I'm going through. I'm going to be trying to increase the weight, especially on the front squats, to really start driving that back up. Yeah, so if you like this type of content, please take a moment now to like this video, subscribe to the channel below, and if you've got any questions on what I'm doing as I go through it, please leave a comment below. Anyways, let's hop in with the warm-up. We're just doing the front squats with running shoes still. I don't really start to add the lifting shoes until I'm up at least 225 or 100 kilo. Yeah, so this will be fun. Empty bar to start. So we got 210 on the bar today for the first set. I'm just doing 2 sets of this just to get things flowing. Aiming at least 5 reps. Should have no problem with this. And as I just said, should have no problem with getting 5 reps. Had no real problem getting 5 reps. It actually felt pretty smooth. It felt a little better than the warm-ups. And then on the final set for the front squats, went up to 100 kilos, 220 pounds. Yeah, so it's resting right on across the collarbone here. Not the most comfortable place in general, but deep breath each time. Each time I do a rep, I take that big deep breath so that I can brace everything in. I'm making sure I'm getting it into the belly as well, and trying to carbon copy every rep. Get deep and just repeat. There you go, and up. Pretty easy. So just a little note on front squats themselves. You're going to keep a much more upright posture when you're doing them with your torso. The reason for that is if you end up tipping forward, you're going to drop it, plus it's going to put a lot of load on the back for no reason. That's why it takes a little bit more mobility through the ankles and the hips to get a full front squat going. But it's actually easier to achieve the depth with a front squat. In terms of the strength that you want in a front squat, you want it to be ideally close to 85% of what you're doing on a back squat. So if you're doing 200 pounds on a back squat, you're going to want to have 170 pounds for the front squat. So right now, my ratios are off a little bit, since how the other day I was doing 290, and today I only had 220 on the bar. I got to bring this up to about 250 pounds so that I narrow that gap. My next training cycle is going to be kind of bringing that gap, making it a little more narrow. You also can't do as many reps typically with the front squat. The upper back's going to fatigue and you're going to end up kind of collapsing down. When you're going heavier with it, you're going to be kind of tapping out at 6. If you're really lucky, you might get 8 reps with a relatively heavy load. It's not really an exercise you do for high volume. It's one that you do for strength. And you're going to feel it even more so through your abdominals, because those are what's helping keep you nice and upright. The upper back's going to keep you nice and upright. You want to keep the elbows nice and high when you're doing them. All right, so now onto the actual arm component, where we start off with our poor man's preacher curl and the lean back skull crushers. I've added a little bit of weight here. Again, remember, the hardest part of the actual preacher curl is in that lower third of the movement. After that, it actually gets a little bit easier for you. That's why you do other arm movements to overall get the full strength curve. But here, working on the weakest part of the movement at the bottom for me, I've got, I think it's like 80 pounds. So we'll see how this goes for 6 to 8 reps. And these actually went a lot better than I originally expected. I thought it was going to be a lot harder right out of the gate, but it actually felt pretty good. The big thing here that I'm really focusing on is each time I get to the bottom, make sure my forearm comes into contact with the pad. That's when I'm almost at full extension of the elbow, and it's when I'm putting it so that I'm getting more range of motion while not putting the tendon at any risk. And the skull crushers, they're just always a fun way to torture the triceps. I'm really focusing here on trying to keep my elbows as tight as possible, but they are always going to kind of flare out a little bit on a skull crusher, just because that's the line of pull that ends up happening. Then the last set, I went up 5 more pounds total, so 2.5 on each side. They really started to feel good, and then all of a sudden, right here is where it felt like it got a lot harder all of a sudden. That's just when fatigue hit, and then it started to become a little bit of a fight to get to the end. Yeah, here it is. Like, bite down on the mouthpiece. In other words, I'm gritting my teeth a little bit, really strain a little bit, and then just finish it up. Then the last set of the skull crushers. I probably should have come a little bit lower on that first rep. On the second rep, much lower. Third rep, much lower, getting better range. the big thing when you're doing these, you're trying to close that elbow joint. You're trying to get it so that your forearm is touching your biceps when you get to the bottom. That's when you know you've closed up the elbow joint. Just be careful not to smash yourself in the face. So, on to the hammer curl portion along with the French press. So with the hammer curls, big thing I'm focusing on since I'm doing it on an incline is that it's going to change the point at which it's hardest. So right here is going to be the hardest point. But if I'm upright, see how it's still going to be a little bit below actual 90 degrees at that point. So I'm still kind of preferentially getting the bottom range to work a little bit harder. And when I get past here, yes, it does get a little bit easier, but it's still harder to do on an incline than it is if I'm going to be sitting upright. Like I got 30 pounds here, so we'll see how it goes. Going 10, maybe 12 reps. So no fat grips this week on the skull crushers. Main reason for that? Sorry, I mean on the hammer curls. And the reason for that is I left them at home. I forgot I had taken them home. And yeah, so if you take a look at the bottom of each rep, you'll see that I'm flexing the triceps a little bit at the bottom. This way, I'm getting my elbow to actually fully extend, and it's a greater range of motion overall. And then with the French press, with the cable, it's really just a burn by the time you get through these. Like I'm using on the Prime Fitness USA rack, it's a 2-to-1 pulley ratio. So while I've got 60 pounds on there, plus so it's like 85, it's really only actually like 45 to 50 hard pounds. Then the second set. So take a look at my hand placement when I'm doing these. I have it so that my hand is at the front of the dumbbell. That way there's a little bit more loading at the back of the dumbbell overall, balance-wise, which allows for a little bit more of a, like, on the way up, because the more weight's going to be dragging behind ever so slightly, you're going to get a little bit more of a, quote-unquote, delayed hardest point in the strength curve. So instead of it being immediately at that one halfway point, it's going to be slightly later. And then we just finish up with some more of the French press, and yeah, that's basically it for these. I did realize that I accidentally deleted the recording of the barbell curls and banded press downs. That was just one set of each, 20 reps on the barbell curl, and it was 25 reps on the banded press down. That's all. I just realized, oops, I accidentally hit the delete button when in... Alright, so that's everything for today's workout. My post-workout is going to be the usual. 1 scoop of ATP Labs grass-fed whey, a half scoop of the Greens and Reds whole food mix, as well as 5 grams creatine monohydrate. This is what I use after all my workouts personally, as well as what I provide my own clients. If you want to get 10% off an order from ATP Labs, go to the link in the description below. That's atplabs.com, and you use code RISLING10 at checkout to get 10% off your order. I also have some added projects in the works. I've got another video on the Standing on the Shoulders Giants series. I've also got another podcast episode coming up on altitude implications for aerobic sports and activity, as well as a recap and breakdown of the Athletics Canada National Track and Field Championships, diving a little bit more into actually breaking down some of the race footers that I took in terms of sprinting, because there's a lot of stuff that gets misconstrued in my industry and in general on what goes into the race itself. So still got all that in the works. Anyways, go get yourself a good arm workout in. Coach Tony, Risling Podium Performance. Embrace your potential.